All right. Welcome, everybody. I think we're going to get started. We're going to try to start promptly. I know you're all super, super busy and you have a lot going on with studio and whatnot. So I'm going to do my best, even though we're going to cover a lot of ground tonight. I'm going to try to keep this at a brisk pace and get you out of here so you can get to whatever you need to do next. And I really do appreciate you all taking the time out of your night to be here. If you're here for Prep to Connect, you're in the right place. So again, thank you so much for being here. My name is Scott Malloy. So I work at the Career Center, and we are the department that puts on Internship Connect. And that's the reason you're all here tonight, is to prepare and make sure you're ready to make the most out of that event. I'm also joined by my colleague and fellow senior career advisor, Jason Arnone, who's welcoming people in the back there. And also my other colleague, Alan Tracy, who's helping us with the technical aspects of tonight and making sure that we have a recording for you all too. So if you need to kind of fall back on any information we discuss and revisit it, you will have that opportunity. As people are filtering in here, I'd love to just get a show of hands and get a sense of who's in the room just for the different levels that we have. So any grad students in the audience? Nice, cool, healthy mix there. Seniors? Chunk of seniors. Juniors? Lots of juniors. That's not surprising. Sophomores? Also a real good amount of sophomores. Awesome. Any first year undergrads? Awesome. Great. So this is what's awesome to see with that is this is a really good mix. And it's also perfect because this event is open to all levels of student at RISD. So from a first year undergrad to a final year graduate student, you are all welcome to attend, and it could be valuable for all of you too. So it was really great to see that kind of cross section, and all of that made sense. But I think it's helpful for me too, as I go through this presentation, I can highlight some points for the different levels in the audience. So with that said, let's get going. So here's what we're going to cover tonight. And it's really why you're all here, right? Which is that you want to make the most out of this event, and you want to know what you need to know to do that. So we're going to start with, just in a basic sense, what this remote event is like for you and what it's going to be like for you. Actually, another question. Who has attended, or maybe last year, attended Internship Connect remote? A few people, but most of you, this event is new. So that's good as well for me to know, because I can make sure that I'm being very clear in what this event is going to be like for those of you that are new to it. We're also going to talk about how you can explore and understand what employers or organizations you have the chance to meet with at Internship Connect Remote. We're also going to talk about what materials you need to create and prepare in advance. Really important, basic but important, how you can sign up. How do you sign up for these meetings that you're going to have with these employers and organizations? Also really important, once you're signed up, you need to kind of prepare and think about what are you going to say in these conversations and how are these conversations with employers going to go? And if that's something that's new to you and something that you've never done, you've never really had sort of a networking or a professional conversation with an employer, that's totally fine. We're going to break it down, and hopefully by the end of tonight, it's something you feel a little bit more comfortable with. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about how you can follow up and sort of maintain contact and connections with the employers and individuals that you meet at this event, so that it's not just a one-off experience and that these actually become lasting professional connections that are going to be of use to you in the short term, but also in the long term as you progress through your RISD education and also even as professionals once you leave. Just to check in, how's my volume? Everybody hearing me okay? Set clear? Cool, awesome. Also, this is a good point to make the point that as we go, if you have questions or if you want clarity on something or something I'm saying is not making sense, 100% raise your hand, interrupt, ask a question. Jason will have, he's walking around, he's got a handheld mic so we can bring it over to you so everybody can hear what you're asking. And I'll repeat it through the mic as well. But point is, if you have questions as we go, you're totally welcome to, bring them up and ask. And I think that'll be helpful for everybody in the room. Chances are, if you have a question, somebody else does as well. So please feel free to interrupt. All right, so let's dive right in. So since there's so many people in the room who have never attended Internship Connect before, and this is going to be a new experience, I do want to just sort of introduce what the event is and what it's going to be like. So this image represents a little bit what the experience is going to be like for you, right? So you can kind of imagine yourself as this student that's in the picture here. It is a remote event, and it's held over Zoom for the most part, but all sort of like video conference style. It's all virtual, okay? So your experience of Internship Connect Remote is going to be what you're seeing on the screen there. And we're now sort of so deep into the pandemic that we're all kind of used to this kind of experience at this point, right? So hopefully this isn't too foreign for you, and you're going to be sort of, well versed in Zoom or related kinds of video conferencing. We'll talk about some tips and etiquette around that later on anyway. But just to be totally clear, this is a 100% virtual remote event. Beyond it being remote, a couple of key things. So maybe the most important thing is, when is this taking place? So this is going to be a 2-night remote or virtual event taking place on both October 27th, which is a Wednesday, and Thursday, October 28th. Both nights it's taking place in the evening from 6 to 9 p.m. So we've chosen that evening time frame because hopefully for most of you, this is kind of avoiding the studio time frame. I know you might have some classes that are around this period. We try to avoid classes if at all possible. We know it might not be possible in all circumstances. If you do have class during this time and you have a meeting scheduled with an employer that you're going to meet with at Internship Connect Remote, we do ask that you check with your faculty and get permission that you can leave class for that meeting, or sort of, step out of class at least temporarily. So that is really important. You have to get your faculty permission if you do have class during this time, but hopefully there's not too many conflicts with that, which is why we picked the evening time frame, or it's part of the reason why at least. So what ICR, or Internship Connect Remote, is at its core is an opportunity to bring together employers and companies and organizations that are interested in hiring and hearing from RISD talent, you as students, in other words, and also students like you who are interested in meeting with companies and learning more about their internship opportunities and potentially interning with them, right? That's what it is it's essentially bringing together you as students and representatives from the companies that have these opportunities. That's what this is about at its core. As I said before, all students are eligible to attend. So anybody who's in this room right now, you're eligible to sign up and meet with companies. We're really, really excited about the lineup of companies that we have this year. I think at last count, we have about 74 organizations. So this says 60 plus, which is of course true, but it's even grown since I created this presentation. It's now, I believe, at 74 different organizations that are attending, which is a terrific, terrific turnout. And it really goes to show how companies are really, really eager to talk with you, see your work, and potentially, offer you internship opportunities down the line. So it's a really, really cool thing that so many companies want to meet with you. We'll go through this in more detail, so don't worry too much if this is a little unclear at the moment. But the way that this is going to work is, although the event itself takes place on October 27th and 28th in the evening, you'll be signing up in advance. In fact, the week before, on October 20th and also on October 21st, you'll be signing up in advance to essentially schedule one-on-one 15-minute Zoom conversations with the organizations that you want to meet with. And those conversations, those Zoom conversations, that's what's going to happen on the 27th and 28th, right? So there's a sign-up process that happens the week before. And once you sign up for those meetings, those are actually happening a week later. Is that making sense? Cool. Okay, so it's kind of like 2 steps in a way, right? Awesome. And if that doesn't make sense, again, feel free to ask. We'll go into more detail about how to go through the sign-up process, but I just wanted to kind of give that as a basic marker. So at its core, right, this event is about conversations. That's really what it is. You're having these 15-minute one-on-one conversations with designers and recruiters and artists and human resource professionals that work at these companies that you're interested in. And these conversations are really just a chance for information sharing, for you to share information about what you're doing, your major, your skill set, your passions and interests, but also for the company to share information about their internship opportunities, to tell you what their internship opportunities look like, what they look for in potential intern applicants, what kind of projects interns are working on at their company. So I hope that that's sort of a comfort, because we'll talk about this, but you don't have to think about this event as like I'm interviewing with these companies. Like, yes, it's a professional conversation, but this really is a learning experience, and it's an experience for you to learn more about opportunities and also to start building a professional network. So don't feel like you have this pressure of it being like an interview, because it really is not. And as I mentioned before, while this is definitely about internship opportunities, it's also another chance to start building a network and developing professional or company connections that you can take with you not only while you're here at RISD, but also afterwards. So I think when you're in school, it can be a little bit challenging, right? Because you're in the RISD bubble and you're in studio or class all day, and you're surrounded by other students and faculty too, but mostly students, right? And that's an awesome thing. And in a way, don't lose track of the fact that the people that are surrounding you in this room and that are in your major and in all of your classes, those are the beginnings of a professional network, right? You're all going to graduate and become practicing artists and designers one day. So don't lose track of that. You actually kind of have a network here, the beginnings of one, and that's awesome. But this event is a good example of how, in small doses, you want to start to break outside of that bubble, right? And start to get a feel for what are professionals in the art and design world doing, and starting to build those connections and learning from those individuals, right? And that's what this event can be about on some level. So think about this again. Yes, it's about internship opportunities, but it's also about starting to build that professional network that can be useful down the line. So it's also important to know that these conversations absolutely may lead to internship opportunities later. In fact, that's a huge reason why we do this program, right? And there's a track record of students definitely getting internships as a direct result of this opportunity. But it's not like you're going to be getting an internship offer on the spot, right? So none of these organizations, again, it's not an interview. So none of these organizations are going to be like having a 15-minute conversation with you and saying like, we want to hire you, like, let's sign a contract or let's talk about a start date. That's not a realistic expectation for the way the event will transpire. So again, you want to kind of think about this as the first step, not an interview, not a portfolio review, but the first step in your internship search process, and the first step that can lead to an application down the line. And so that last bullet point, just kind of reiterating what I just said, but I really encourage you all to think about this as the beginning of your internship search. Even if you're looking for an internship in winter session, like you'll probably be applying like starting now and in throughout November. But a lot of you might even be thinking more about summer internship opportunities. And a lot of those applications tend to start to become available in the new year, right? In January, February, and even March. So again, that's why I'm encouraging you to not think about this as like the end all be all, or this is your only opportunity to get an internship. This is the beginning of that process. Making sense? Awesome. All right. So that's setting the stage for what this event is about and what the core of it is. A really important question, and some of you may have kind of started to dig into this a little bit, but some of you may have not. And so I want to show you how you can start to get acquainted with and learn about the organizations and employers that are going to be attending. And like I said, we have over 70 registered right now, which is amazing. They represent organizations and opportunities across the art world, across design, across even, tech and, internet related companies. So it's a really nice sampling of the professional design world, professional creative world. So if you haven't checked it out yet, we have a website that is sort of like the hub for everything Internship Connect. So it's that link right there, internshipconnect.risd.edu. We've sent you all emails too with that link, so you can always check your email to find it if you forget what the link is. But I encourage you to bookmark this because it's going to have a lot of the information that we're actually going to cover tonight, so you can kind of refer back to it if you need to. But one of the things that's on there that will be really helpful, and you're seeing a screenshot of it on the right there, is a list of all the participating companies. And so it's the place where you can go kind of see it all in one snapshot and start to explore and make a list for yourself, essentially, of the companies you want to meet with. So a couple things to note. It might be a little difficult to see on the screen because of the size, but I'll try to kind of point it out. When you are seeing the company, right, below that company, you'll see like a little code, right? So if we kind of try to hobble over here, got an Achilles injury that I'm nursing here, but you can see, like, if we look at the top one, 72 and Sunny, you can see how it's probably difficult for some in the back, but there's a little, there's sort of letters beneath that. It says D plus M, FAB, and GT. So what that's referring to, and all of the companies have this code, what that's referring to is a list, of the majors that organization is most interested in meeting with, okay? So they're sort of saying that majors from this, or students from these majors are the ones that probably like best fit for our internship opportunities. So navigating this list based upon your major is a really good starting point and a good way to start to explore who you might want to meet with. All of these company names are also hyperlinked, so you can click on any one of these and it'll take you to the company's website so you can learn more about them. I'll actually kind of demo that in a second. But navigating by major is like a good first step. I do want to make a quick note about that, though. You're not like restricted by that, meaning if you saw a company and you love that company, it's a company you want to potentially intern with, but they don't have your major listed, that's okay. You can still actually sign up and meet with them. That's totally fine. What you just might want to think about is you may have to be prepared in your conversation with them to sort of explain, like, I know I wasn't on the major list of, I wasn't on a list of majors that your company noted as maybe being best fit for your internships, but I'm really passionate about what you do. I think I could be a good fit, and just be ready to kind of explain why you have an interest in them. So it's totally fine to do that, but you might just have to be ready to kind of broach the topic with them. So again, don't think that like you have to have a match by major. You can go outside of that if you want to. The other thing you're seeing, and I know it's relatively small, but next to each company, there's in pink a note of what night or nights they're attending. So some, in fact, most are attending both nights, but they might not all be attending both nights. Some are choosing to attend one or the other. So it's just a helpful thing for you to know. When you get to the sign up process later on, it'll be very apparent and you won't really have to think about too much what night it is. Like, it'll automatically show you what times are available and you can kind of choose if it works for you. But one thing you might want to consider with regards to the nights that they're attending is if a company or an organization is only attending one night, it probably means that they're going to have a little bit less availability and less meeting times for students to meet with them. So, especially if it's a really popular company, that might mean you might want to prioritize meeting with that company a little higher on your signups, right? Well, that'll make more sense as we go through it, but it's just something to think about. Companies that are attending both nights, they're probably going to have more opportunities to meet with students. Companies that are attending only one night, fewer opportunities. Make sense? Cool. And then, like I said, really at its core, this page will let you click on the websites of those companies, explore what they do, and see if it's of interest to you, and see if it's a company that you might want to intern with. Sort of what I was just referring to before, but maybe to put a finer point on it too. As you're exploring companies, I do really encourage you to make a ranked priority list. So what I mean by that is start to kind of think about, like, this is my, almost like maybe when you were applying to colleges, like, this is my top choice, this is my second choice, this is my third choice, so on and so forth. Because that will come in handy when we get to the sign up process, and you'll be able to kind of use that as your guide and say, I'm going to start signing up with this organization because that's the one I most want to meet with, and then I'm going to go to number 2 on my list, and then I'm going to go to number 3. So it's a little kind of hack that I encourage you all to do. So I just want to quickly kind of demo, I might go full screen here, but I want to quickly demo, even though it sounds simple, like, oh, I go to their website and I can learn about them. I think there's like kind of a deeper level to this, and I just want to show you with an example as to how you can kind of explore a company via their website, and you can learn some kind of cool things through it. So on a surface level, you'll probably be able to see like, what do they make? What do they create? What kind of creative work do they do? And that's going to be a clue to you as to whether it's like exciting to you and you might want to intern with them. But sometimes you can even learn things about the people that work there or what their work culture is like and sort of what their values are, which again can help you kind of decide as to like, do I want to speak with these people? Is this a place I would want to intern? Sometimes they'll even note if their company has won distinctions or awards. And again, that just sort of points to their level of notoriety within the creative world. And you oftentimes can find information on internships where they talk about their opportunities and even talk about like what they like to see in internships or in interns. So I'm just going to click on this video and really just kind of quickly illustrate those points. So this is just, again, it's kind of like illustrating how you can use this page on the website. So let's just say in this example, maybe I'm a furniture design student, and so I'm interested in companies that have a interest in furniture designers. And so I could find O&G Studio here. I could click on them and I'll pull up their website. And what's kind of neat about O&G is their homepage almost functions as an Instagram feed. So it's actually really easy to kind of like scroll down and get a sense of the work that they do. I can see that they're producing, furniture, and I can kind of get a sense for their aesthetic, the different materials they use, the different kinds of furniture products and home products that they're creating. So again, in like one quick scroll, I'm really kind of getting a sense of what they do. But I can dig deeper. So if I go to like an info or an about page, one of the cool things you'd find with O&G is they're actually a RISD alumni founded studio. And I'm sort of highlighting it on the screen there. They were founded by RISD grads Jonathan Glatt and Sarah Osana, who actually met at RISD. One was studying interior architecture, one was studying jewelry and metalsmithing. And with their forces combined, they actually founded this furniture design studio, which is really cool. I could then go to their careers page, see what openings they have, but also all the way at the bottom, they actually have information about internships. And in this, they actually kind of talk about what the internship looks like a little bit and the qualities that they look for, and also the time frames that they have internships. So before we even get to Internship Connect, this is actually a chance for you to kind of do some scouting, right? And not every company has this level of information on their website, but it's not uncommon. And so doing a little bit of digging and research can be a really helpful part of your process. And it's good for Internship Connect, but it's also just good practice for searching for internships, period. So I wanted to kind of share that and demo that with you real quick. I'm going to go back to the presentation here. Sorry, bear with me. If you really want to take your research to a next level, I recommend using LinkedIn because it's a super powerful tool for sort of company exploration. So if you've never used LinkedIn or you're not super familiar with it, that's totally okay. And I'll admit, like LinkedIn's not perfect and sometimes it can be a tough platform to navigate, but I want to show you something that's pretty cool about it. So LinkedIn has this feature called company pages. So basically any company, there are like millions of companies in the world and there are literally millions of company pages on LinkedIn. The company can sort of create a company page and highlight themselves and talk about their opportunities and talk about what it's like to work there. And so it's a chance for you to learn more about the company's work in a really cool way. It's a way to see if there are RISD alumni already working there, which is a good sign. I like to call it kind of their RISD friendly companies. If a place has hired RISD alumni, that's a really nice clue to you that it might be a great place to intern because they already sort of are hiring people who've come from the RISD culture. So that's a cool thing. I'll show you in a video in a second how you can track that information down. And also another kind of really cool thing is that you can learn about the range of roles at that company. You can see what people are doing there, what their positions are, what they studied at RISD, and start to get a sense of like what the creative work of that company looks like and who's responsible for it. So this is even a deeper dive than just using the website. So I want to play another video for you. Hopefully this is finding this helpful. So let's use Adidas as an example. So if I'm on LinkedIn, I can just go to the search tab, type in Adidas or any company, and click on their company page. And it looks something like this. There's all these tabs at the top. I recommend checking out Life. So not every company does this, but a lot of really established companies do. And it's really cool. They'll show what life is like working at the company. There are some cool video vignettes you can check out. As you're seeing here, there's even photos from the work environment. So you can kind of see like what it is like to actually work there. And like as an athlete, obviously I've had better days, but as an athlete, it's really cool to see that Adidas, like, not only do they have a cool work environment, they actually have these kind of gyms and facilities where they're like testing out their products, right? Like, how cool is that? So it's an awesome way to get a vibe for what's there. What else you're seeing is this people tab, which this is the alumni idea I was talking about. So it actually shows you, in this case, 44,000 people that work at Adidas, but you can search by Rhode Island School of Design and it'll just show you those employees. And what's awesome is if you scroll down, it'll show you who they actually are. And this is where I was saying you can actually see what their roles are. And if you wanted to click on any one of these, like we'll do with Eric Whiting here, I can see, okay, this person's a senior material designer. That sounds interesting to me. Let me see, essentially, let me look at Eric's resume. Let me see what they've done. What did they do before Adidas? Even going back in time to when they were a student at RISD, what internships did they have? Maybe that's helpful for me to know if I have an interest in textiles and material design. I can see the skill sets that they have too. So again, I'm starting to really kind of piece together what this can be like as far as what skills I might want to develop if I have this kind of goal of being a materials designer. This is a little bit next level what's about to come up, but I can also see that they were like working as a textile, as a materials designer during RISD at this project called Textile House, which was this really, really cool architectural installation. I'll show you a picture in a second, but basically this really sort of forward-thinking, sustainable housing project or prototype. And Eric's work as a material designer was thinking about how textiles could be used for innovation when it came to sustainable building and housing. Again, you might not want to go that deep. I just find it super cool that you can like go to this level using LinkedIn. And I think that LinkedIn's sort of oftentimes this like really vague thing. And people are like, I think I should be on it. I have a profile. I don't really know what to do with it. And this is an example of like how it can be a powerful tool. So it can be a powerful tool for research for Internship Connect, but even beyond. And so that's why I wanted to take some time to show that. Sorry, each time I do the video, I gotta like click in and click out. So just checking in so far. Is this all feeling good, making sense? Cool, awesome. So like I said, there's more than 70 organizations that are coming. Definitely not gonna go through each one. I do wanna give you just a real quick sampling though, so you can kind of get an idea of who's gonna be there. We've got companies like So Limited, which is sort of a really cool company that works at the intersection of art, design, and tech. They do a lot of art installations and work with the built environment. You can kind of see one of their lighting projects here. But kind of thinking, you know, how do technology and physical installations and art installations all kind of work in conjunction with each other to create these really unique physical experiences. So Limited is a really, really cool company. They've hired RISD interns before, come to many of our events, and they're eager to speak with all of you. A little bit more on like the traditional architecture side, but still really awesome, is a firm like RAMSA or Robert A.M. Stearns Architects, which is in New York City. And I'm highlighting them. Their work's really cool, but also another great example of like a RISD friendly company that has, you know, at any given time, anywhere between like 10 and 15 alums that are working there. So there's like a really great RISD population present. A little bit more on the fine art side. You might find an organization like Paste Prints, which is one of like the premier galleries in Chelsea, New York, especially as it's related to prints, limited editions, printmaking, work in multiples, you know, illustration, painting even as well. So if you have interest in those areas and you're also interested in sort of like gallery or art organizations, that could be a really good company or organization to meet with. If you're an illustrator or an FAV or even a painter who sort of is working in more illustrative ways, DreamWorks Animation, right? Most people know DreamWorks. We're super excited that they're going to be coming. They'll probably be a very popular company. But if you have interest in animation or feature films, really, really cool that they're going to be here. Again, more on the kind of fine art spectrum and sort of looking at an artist studio kind of environment. We have Allison Evans Ceramics. So if you're interested in sort of like more intimate artist studio environment, smaller scale production, how to make it as an artist who's producing their own work and founding their own studio, this could be a great internship opportunity. Really cool organization. Again, kind of related to like landscape architecture, interior architecture, the built environment, is Raymond Jungles. And you can kind of see from that image, they're really interested in bringing nature and ecology into architectural environments or into physical spaces. Just their website's fun to look at. You know, if you have interest in this area, I definitely encourage you to check it out. And if you have interest in nature and sustainability, it's also a really cool target. Mythology is sort of a branding and design studio, also based in New York. What's cool about them, their work's fun and awesome, but also they do have many RISD alums in sort of like senior level design positions. And for the past few years, they've also consistently hired RISD interns, which is a great thing. Right in your backyard, but also super exciting is the RISD Museum. I think there's many, many amazing things about the RISD Museum, but when it comes to internships, one of the things I really like is, for one, a lot of their internship opportunities are paid, which is a great thing. And also they're varied. You could do an education internship, you could do a curatorial internship, you could do something in marketing and branding. They even have like video production roles too. So really, really cool, varied opportunities like right in your backyard. And they'll be here to talk about their opportunities, or they'll be at Internship Connect to talk about their opportunities. Speaking of right in your backyard, another local company, but in a way a worldwide company too, is a place like Hasbro. So if you're interested in toy design or play design, or think that could be something you might explore in your career, Hasbro, again, great history of hiring interns. We've got like 50 to 60 alumni that work there. So it's another really great place with deep RISD connections. More on the apparel, fashion, textiles side of things is a company like Nick and Zoe. And again, if you have kind of interest in fashion, apparel, or textiles, this would be a great one. And also a company that's had a good connection with RISD over the recent years too. And then if you have interest in publishing or artist books, or again, sort of like publications or work on paper, Chronicle Books could be a really good one too. Again, a place where we've had RISD alumni work. I think one of the cool things about Chronicle Books to highlight is they also, though it's not an internship, this is maybe kind of forward thinking, they have like a design fellowship program for early career designers. So if you're like fresh out of school or within the first few years of your career and you're interested in designing for publication or designing for print, they have a fellowship program which is like geared towards early career designers, where it's like 1 year, you're working there full time, but they also know that you're new to the industry. So you get a lot of guidance, a lot of mentorship. So it's a really cool sort of entry level paid opportunity. And they've offered that at least for the last 5 years or so. So while it's not an internship, it's a good sign that they really take training designers and working with new designers seriously, which I think is a cool thing. So I know I sped through that. That was 10, right? Just a sampling. So I don't want you to like think that like, oh, I didn't like any of those companies, or I don't want to meet with any of those. That's okay. This was 10 of the 70. I really just wanted to present it just as like a taste for you to understand who's going to be at the event and who you can meet with. So we've just a pause. So what have we talked about? We've talked about what the event is like, what it is at its core. We've talked about how you can know who's going and how you can do a little research to sort of better understand what they do. Now we're going to switch it a little bit to what do you need to do to prepare? So in particular right now, we're going to talk about what materials do you need and how to create those effectively. So there's only one document or material that is required, and that is a resume. And part of the reason why that is required is because when you sign up, and again, we'll show that process in detail, but when you sign up, you will have to upload and submit your resume to the organization. So essentially they will be, for everyone that they're meeting with, they're going to have your resume in advance. Okay. So that's why it's required. They will kind of see it in advance of meeting with you. And you won't be able to sign up without it. It's a requirement in the system. Like the system won't allow you to sign up. So preparing a resume in advance of the sign up on next Wednesday is something that you should do. Don't freak out if this is intimidating or if you don't have a lot of experience with resumes. Couple of things to note with that. So the screenshot that you're seeing on the right here, on our website, careercenter.risd.edu, we have whole sections and even examples of resumes that you can look at. And they're all like RISD specific. So they're all related to the majors that you are all in. They're specific to sort of the skill sets that you're developing. So it's a great way to sort of like look at examples, and you can build your resumes based upon what you're seeing. There's also guides too that kind of help you understand resume best practices as well. So if you're new to resumes, don't be too scared. Like, there's support for that. And it's that link that's on there right now if you want to track it down. You could also go to our site, and there's like a search feature. Just search resume. It'll take you where you need to go. I'm going to reinforce this idea later, but we're also all here to help you in your development of these materials. That's a big part of what we do at the Career Center. And we have drop-in hours, and you can make appointments with us. So if you want to talk to somebody who has some expertise in developing resumes and professional materials, you have that outlet too. You can talk to me or Jason or many of the other members of our office who will help you. Okay, that freaked me out a little bit, but we're good. So you have support. So I don't want you to worry about this too much. The other piece, and I really want to stress that this is optional. So the resume is required. It is optional for you to develop and also upload and submit a portfolio sample. And I'm going to show you what this can look like in a second. But a portfolio sample is really just like a very simple one sheet that has some examples and like thumbnail images of your work. It's really just kind of like a taste of what your creative work is. It's not like a full portfolio. It's not multiple pages. It's really, it should be relatively easy to make. But again, this is optional. Companies are not going to be expecting that you have this. And I know you're all super busy. And so I don't want you to feel the pressure to make this. But if you wanted to, and you'll see an example in a second, if you see that and you're like, oh, cool, I think I can throw that together. It's a nice touch. It's a professional thing. It allows you to kind of show your work in a quick space. It'll give the companies and employers a sense of what you make. It's nice, but truly optional. So let's start with the resume first, and then we'll get to the portfolio sample. So again, we can definitely talk about this, and there's resources on the website to help you follow up with this. But with your resume, no matter where you're at in the process, no matter whether you are a first-year undergrad or you're in grad school, I encourage you to build a resume that really focuses on mainly two things. And those two things are your skills, the creative skills that you have that you're developing through studio and through classes, and maybe even before RISD to a certain extent, and also your experience. Now, the experience thing, I totally understand, can be a little intimidating sometimes, right? Because like, you're all here because you want internships, right? So you may not have a ton of experience, and that's totally fine and understood. And what you're sort of seeing in this example, and why I've circled it with the purple kind of highlight there, is that if you are somebody who doesn't have past internships, or you've never really worked before, you don't have a lot of related work experience to art and design, that's okay. And notice what Daya is doing here. They're actually highlighting a few of their most relevant or noteworthy courses that they've taken. In their case, a sustainable wearable device course and a design principles course as an industrial designer with a goal to work towards sustainable material design. These courses match their goals, right? So they're literally using their coursework and studio work as experience, which is something all of you can do regardless of whether you are on the fine art spectrum, design spectrum, or anywhere in between. That's something you can do. So this is an actual example that you can look at on the website in the guides that I was talking about. But it's a great example of what you can do with limited experience. The other thing that I'm highlighting here is the skills section. Again, this is something that all of you can do as well, regardless of where you're at. And that's to build the skills section with an emphasis on the skills that relate to your internship goals or that relate to your major at the very least. And so what you're seeing here for Daya is, a design subcategory, fabrication, and then just digital or software. You don't have to replicate that or mirror that. It makes sense in her case to highlight those things. But think about your own skills, your own strengths, and also how it relates to the kind of places you may want to intern, and you can build a skills category similar to this. The last thing with a resume, and you're seeing it's not highlighted, but you're seeing it in the header section, is contact info. And if you have it, a link to an online portfolio. Does not have to be a website necessarily. Like if you have a Behance profile, for example, that's cool too. Ideally, if you have a link for people to go see your work, that's a really good thing to add on your resume. And also, when you submit your resume for Internship Connect, it's going to give employers a chance to click on that link and go see your work if they want to. So yeah, go for it. It's a really good question. So the question was, is Instagram kind of too casual for a portfolio, or could it be used as a portfolio? I think if you can build so if all you have is Instagram, my recommendation would be to at least maybe start and kind of like upgrade to a Behance profile, for example. There's a couple reasons for that. It's not that Instagram is bad. Like I actually think Instagram is great. And if you all have one, that's awesome. But I think of it more as like a supplement to a portfolio, because what you can do with a website or a Behance is it allows you to feature projects a little bit better and cleaner and in a more obvious way. You can also tell the story of projects a little bit better. So while you might have like a final rendering or a sculpture or wherever it may be, you can also then break down the process on that page too in your Behance or on your online portfolio that you can't do as well with an Instagram or as cleanly. So an Instagram is great. And I actually think it's a terrific way to show work and potentially have people find you and your work. So again, I'm not saying like ditch your Instagram, but I would pair it with something else like a Behance. If you don't want to go a full-fledged website, that's okay. You don't have to do that. But starting a Behance profile is a great first step. Yeah, good question. Does that all make sense to everybody? Cool. Awesome. So portfolio sample. And again, totally optional, right? I know you're all super busy, so I know I'm saying that a lot, but I really want to stress that. So you're kind of seeing an example. This is the example that I'm showing here is maybe somebody who's a little bit more seasoned and has a little bit more experience. So don't be intimidated by like the finish or polish of the images. What I want you to really focus on is basically just what they're doing, which is just highlighting 3 to 4 projects that show what do they make, what do they create, what is their skill set. You could have like a little kind of intro or bio like this person is doing here. What's blacked out there, just, to respect the privacy of this person, would be their name and contact info or name and website, online portfolio, a way to see more of their work. And that's what this is really about. It's a taste. It's an enticement. The idea is that they get a sense of what you make, and then they can go see more online at your portfolio website or your Behance. Just another variation on the theme. This is somebody who's a little bit less experienced, a little bit less seasoned. They're showcasing student projects here. This is an industrial design example, but again, you can do this with any type of discipline or any type of major. And it's not about like quantity of projects. It's not about packing the page with a lot. It's more about quality and kind of showing the projects that you're most proud of or the projects that you think most relate to your internship goals. So yeah, go ahead. No, yeah, go for it. That's what I'm here for.
Curious if you have any advice if you're trying to sort of curate and show different companies,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really great question too. So the question was, any advice for if you are, interested in different kinds of companies, or you might have some work that fits for one company and other work that fits for another. It's a great question, and it actually, in some ways, kind of relates to applying to things in general, actually. So you could attack it different ways, but for that, you might think about, do I just create slightly different portfolio samples, right? Like one, for example, let's just say you had, let's just think about maybe you have some work that skews a little bit more towards like design and graphic design and branding. And so you want to highlight a couple projects that are in that realm. But then you also, maybe you're an illustrator and you also do work that is more illustration based, or it's more related to like children's book illustration or book design or something like that. You could create 2 slightly different portfolio samples, one that speaks to one area and one that speaks to another. And that's just an example, but like you can definitely create different pieces, and you would have the opportunity for Internship Connect to choose what you want to submit to a company. You can upload multiple things, and then when you're applying to a given company, it'll make sense. I use the word applying. When you're sort of submitting your stuff to a company, you can choose what you want to upload to them. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it's another great question. So the question was, if you have, sequential art or motion-based work, or time-based work, is there a way to display that? And that's a really good point. That is one of the areas, or those are the areas that sometimes don't translate as well on a portfolio sample. So you're limited a little bit. I think one of the things you can do is think about screenshots. I know it's not ideal, but you can try to represent the work, whether it's like sequential art or storyboarding, or it's more animation or video. You can try to represent it as best you can through a still. And also through captioning, you can kind of explain what it is, that this is a 15-minute live action piece that, you're showing a screenshot of. So there are kind of shortcuts. And the idea is that you're representing it as best you can. But again, keep in mind, the goal is to maybe get them to your Vimeo or get them to a website where they can see the full piece. So I know it's maybe not quite as ideal, but the principle still stands, where you're sort of like enticing them, and then they can go see more. Yeah, it's a really good question. Anything else? Great questions. Yeah. Sorry, can you just repeat that a little louder? I'm sorry. So it's like so I think the question was, is the portfolio sample like just for this event, or is it good beyond this event? Is that the question? Yeah, it's a really good question. Sorry, I kind of just screamed in the mic there. So I think it's best suited for this event. It can be, though, a good practice to submit sometimes as an introduction to companies. So it depends on the industry. Sorry. Portfolio samples are fairly common in the architectural world, for example. They may not be just one page, but they're sort of like shortened versions of your portfolio. And you can sort of apply that principle regardless of what your discipline is, where you can kind of say, like, it may not be as simple as one page, but you can send people a shortened version of your portfolio. And then again, with making it clear to them that if they want to see your full body of work, they can go to your full website. So it can be something advantage of it. So what's nice about it is that it does give people a quick way to access your work and sort of understand what you do. And then hopefully that's enough to kind of hook them. And then you've won, and they're sort of like going on to see your full body of work. So it can be useful. What's really important at the end of the day is you want to make it super easy for people to find your work. And so that means you want to make it super easy for people to get to your website. Like it's mostly about your online presence. And so that's why I'm emphasizing that should be on your resume. If you have a portfolio sample, it should be on that. If you're emailing people, I encourage you to like include it in your signature on your emails. Like basically you want to make it so that people are clicking to go see your work, and it's easy for them. They don't have to work to do it. So hopefully that helps. You're very welcome. All right. So we've talked about a lot of things, hopefully, as far as like preparing materials, feeling good about that now. I do want to walk you through step by step the sign up process, because it is step by step. There are a couple of steps to it. And so I want to just make sure everybody here is comfortable with it. And my colleague Jason may hop in too at some point as I'm going through this if he wants to add some things. But definitely let us know if you have questions as we go. So as I said, right, we're kind of thinking about this event in multiple phases, and you do need to sign up on next Wednesday starting at 6 p.m. That's at least the first evening where you can sign up to meet with companies. So this is an important date. So yeah, taking a picture or coming back to this presentation is a good idea as a reminder. And signups, again, like I said, will start at 6 p.m. Before signups happen, we've talked about some of these things, but it's worth reiterating. Remember, you want to create that ranked list so you have like an easy way to sort of say, I'm going to start with this company and then move on down. I recommend once your resume is ready, uploading it to the artwork system prior to sign up so that it's there and easy for you to access. Okay. You can do that at any time. So when you log into Artworks, there's a profile tab If you click on that, it brings you to a page where you can upload documents. They're called application materials. You can upload whatever you want there. So you can have as many versions of your resume or as many versions of your portfolio sample. Do that in advance, because if you're doing that right as signups are happening, it's going to slow you down. So this is definitely something you want to do in advance. And then similar to the meetings themselves, if you need to miss class for this process, you do need to ask permission for your instructor. We don't want this to interfere with class. The good news is, I'm going to show you in a second, the signups are not just this night, they happen the next day too. So even if for some reason you can't do the signup process this night, you will have a chance to do it the next day too. But if you can make it this night, it's definitely in your best interest, because you'll have the best chance of signing up for any company that you want to meet with on this first night. So if you've never done this before, which I think if you're here, probably you have, because you had to register for this event. So you probably have logged into Artworks. But if you haven't, it's just risd.1220.com. You use your RISD credentials to log in. So it should be very easy for you to do. You may want to just beforehand test to make sure your RISD credentials are working, because if they're not, you have to contact the help desk, the IT help desk. It's not something that we can fix. So just making sure that that's ready and good to go beforehand is a good practice. The other thing is use a laptop or a desktop if you can. Don't use a mobile device. The system just works a little bit better, and it's easier to navigate on a laptop than versus a phone or a tablet. Okay, so you've logged in. You're in. First thing you want to do is essentially you're going to sort of like find the companies that you want to sign up for. And I'm going to show you a video in a second that will literally walk you through this, but you're basically there's a tab that says OCI and jobs on the left-hand side. You're going to click on that, and then you're going to click a button at the top that says OCI. And what this is going to show you is a list of all the organizations that are attending Internship Connect that you can sign up with, okay? Don't be thrown off too much by the term OCI. It technically stands for on-campus interview. It's just the term that the system uses, so we're kind of talking about applying. You'll see we're talking about applying to OCIs. It's just a good phrase to have in your head. But when we say OCI, we're really kind of referring to this opportunity to meet with companies at Internship Connect. So just so that terminology makes sense. So just to kind of show you what I was just talking about. So you're in Artworks. You're going to click on that OCI and job listings section here. And then you're going to click on the top section here that says OCI. And once we do that, it's going to pull up all the possible companies that you can meet with. Now you could, in that little search tab there, you could search at that point by name. So if you knew you wanted to meet with Hasbro, or you wanted to meet with Google, or you wanted to meet with the RISD Museum, you can type it in there and it'll just show you the company you're interested in. But that's kind of step one. Next step. So once you've kind of reached the page where all of the companies are listed, this is where you're going to have to, this is essentially the stage where you're uploading and submitting your resume. Maybe not uploading, where you're submitting your resume to the company, okay? So this is kind of step 1 of 2 of the sign up process. Really important to note here, and I'll try to explain this as clearly as possible. This first evening, so again, next Wednesday, the 20th, you're limited to just 3 applications and essentially 3 meetings that you can sign up for. And we're doing this as an equity thing, right? So because there will be some students who may have class and won't be able to sign up that night. And so we don't want all of the slots to be gone, all of the meeting times to be gone. We want to try to give all students a chance to get at least 1 meeting opportunity if they're interested. So that's why we're limiting this first night. You could max out at 3 applications or 3 meetings, okay? The next day, I'll go into this in a minute. The next day, we're going to lift that limit. So it's only a limit for this first night of signups. And again, it's to try to create a level playing field for everybody. That all making sense so far? Jason, so far so good? Awesome. Jason's my sign up guru. So I'm just trying to check in with him and make sure that this is all making sense as I go through it. So here's what this looks like, what I was just explaining. So again, we're back on this page. We're seeing all the potential companies. I click on the company I'm interested in, and then there's this blue button at the top where I click apply. And like I said, this is your chance where you can upload this example is showing uploading a portfolio sample. Again, you don't have to do that. It's really the resume that is the key thing. Yeah.
Go here within that time period, and when you got supply, that will count. It's not like you press start applying now, and then it takes you to page.
Can you say that again? Sorry, I just might not have heard it right.
If you apply, you're doing this list on the website for any job listing, so it would be
I see what you're saying.
if it's within this specific period of time.
Yeah.
That's how it's done.
Correct. Yeah. So you click on OCI and jobs, and then you click OCI. You can see right now, you can see the listing of all the companies that are attending. What you can't see is that apply button. So that will only be live starting at 6 p.m. next Wednesday. Yeah. So that's a great question. So yeah, you wouldn't be able to sign up now. And obviously that's intentional because we want this to be fair and equitable to people. So yeah, you can see it now. If you want to take a look, by all means, go for it, but you wouldn't be able to do that next step. I'm just going to, actually, no, we went through this. So again, so this stage, you're uploading your resume. That's the key thing you're doing at this stage. However, one second. Get through this. However, you're not done, okay? So what you have done is submit your resume, but you have not selected the meeting time. You've not actually signed up for a chance to meet with this company at Internship Connect. So there's kind of a next step. It's really clear and apparent when you're doing this, but I want to make sure you all know that. Like, you kind of have to do this two-step process. So you'll see on the next screen when I show it, there'll be an additional button that allows you to select the time and pick the time you want to meet with them. But just make sure that you're doing that. It'll take you to essentially like a confirmation screen where you'll be able to see that, like, yes, you have the interview scheduled. I know this is confusing because I was saying these aren't interviews. They are not, but it's sort of just the language that the system uses, okay? So you'll see that, like, you have a confirmed interview, but the interview really just is referring to a Zoom meeting or a virtual meeting that you're going to have. And you want to be careful. Do not double book. So in other words, if you sign up for one meeting at 6:15 with a company, don't sign up for another meeting at 6:15 with a different company. Unfortunately, the system is not sophisticated enough to stop that. So you kind of have to, like, I would recommend as you're doing this, just like jot notes to yourself, be like, okay, I've got this meeting at this time, just so you can make sure you're not double booking. So again, just to illustrate what we just saw. So you've submitted your resume. It'll then give you this prompt to select a time. When you do that, you're taken to this page where you see all the different time options. You pick the one that works for you. You hit select time. It says success. You hit OK. And it'll also bring you back to that company page. And you can see where it says in blue, interview scheduled. And it'll also even show you the Zoom link or the virtual link that you need to join when it's time to have that meeting, right? So you want to just make sure when you're doing this that you're seeing this sort of like interview scheduled confirmation, because that's sort of like, that's how you know, okay, I did it. Like, I have my meeting time scheduled. You will, on the cover page of Artworks, when you log in, you'll also be able to see there's like a little tile that says my calendar. It'll also have your confirmed confirmed meetings there as well. So that's another way where you can kind of track and make sure that you've done this right. And I believe, Jason, you get an email as well, right? You also will get an email to your RISD email. So there's multiple ways where you can make sure that you did this. Yeah, go ahead, Jason, please.
I'd just like to mention that you may have noticed 10-minute time slots in this preview that we showed. This year, we're expanding the meeting times to 15 minutes, just in case anyone was curious about that.
Yeah, great point. This might not happen to all of you, this next thing. So it's not like a required step necessarily, but it's something to know about. So again, that first night, you're limited to essentially like 3 applications, right? Like 3 chances to sign up with companies. What could happen, especially if an employer is like super popular. So DreamWorks will probably be very popular, for example, or Google or Facebook. Some companies that just have a big brand recognition, a lot of students may want to sign up to meet with them. And so it could happen that their schedule fills up pretty quickly on that first night. It's definitely possible, and it's happened in the past for sure. So if that happens, in other words, if you go and you upload your resume But then you get to the select a time phase and there's nothing available. It'll essentially be blank, I believe. You won't be able to select a time because their schedule is full. That's a bummer, right? Understandably. But what we encourage you to do is essentially go back a step, go back to that company's main page on Artworks as an OC, go back to their OCI page. And there's a button, I'll show you this in a second, but there's a button to withdraw your application. And what this allows for you to do is essentially so think of it as like you're getting one of your 3 slots back and you can use it on another company. So that might have been your first choice, but maybe you can take that back and go use it on your second choice. Does that make sense? If you don't withdraw that application, the system won't allow you to sort of like use it towards another company. Okay. And it's just like, it's part of the complexities of the system that we're working with. But it's an important step if and only if the company you're trying to meet with on that sign up night is full or their schedule has filled up quickly. So here's what that looks like. So let's say in this example, that company had a full schedule. You can click on withdraw from application, click on it. It'll kind of reload and the screen will look like this, which is sort of signifying that like, okay, you don't have this application live anymore. You can then go use that spot on somebody else. Cool. So that covers night 1. Like I said, you have the opportunity, if you want it, to continue signups the next day. So we will open up signups again on the following day, Thursday the 21st at noon. Okay. And at that point, as it says in bold on the right there, that 3 OCI application limit is gone. At this point, it's totally open. So you can, in theory, sign up for as many of these as you want to. I think you can max out at 20. We definitely do not recommend that. Like, pace yourself. You want to have breaks. This is way more of a quality over quantity kind of thing. Like, it doesn't mean you're having a successful event if you meet with 18 companies. You know what I mean? Like, you should be thoughtful about it. But you could add as many as 5 more if you wanted to. You can definitely go beyond this 3 limit at this point. It's important to know that signups do close. Though they open up again at noon on Thursday, they close essentially at midnight or at 11:59 that evening. So you essentially have from noon till the end of that day to add more applications and more meetings at that stage. Here's just like a quick, so kind of going back to that scenario, if a company you really wanted to meet with they have a full schedule, you just couldn't get on their schedule because they filled up so fast. And that definitely could happen. If that happens, all is not lost. And especially on Thursday, when that limit is lifted and you can add more companies, we do encourage you at that time to apply or submit your resume, in other words, to any company that you're interested in, even if their schedule is full. So you won't be able to meet with them at Internship Connect, which is a bummer. But what will happen is if you apply to that company and you've submitted your resume, so essentially you've done that first step, we will submit all the resumes of everyone who has interest in any company. We'll forward it on to the organization, to the company, and we'll say, here's the full list of people that wanted to meet with you. Here's your schedule and who you're going to meet with at Internship Connect. But also here's an additional list of people who wanted to meet with you and just were unlucky and couldn't get on your schedule. We encourage you, Google, or we encourage you, Ramza, or whoever the company is, we encourage you to look at this list of resumes and potentially be in touch with these students as well, because they may be good fits for your internship and you might want to talk to them about your opportunities. We can't guarantee, we can't make companies reach out to you. Wish we could, but we can't. And Jason's going to elaborate on something in a second. We can't force them to, but we definitely encourage it, and we will reach out to the companies to encourage that they follow up with everybody if they are able to. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to add maybe a different perspective. If you think of it from the employer, if an employer was participating in Internship Connect and could only talk to 10 students on their schedule, they likely would not be joining this event. They are hoping that not only can they meet with students on their schedule, but they'll also come away from this event with 20, 30, 40 more students that are now recruiting contacts for their investment of time. So please, like, we're not just bluffing here. The companies want to engage in this event because they know that they're going to get much more than the students that they get to meet with on their schedule.
Yeah, it's such a great point, Jason, and it really does speak to what this is about, right? Like, it's awesome. We have 70 companies attending this because of you, because they want to meet with you and they want to see your work and they want to receive your resumes. Like that's true. You know what I mean? That's what's awesome about this. And that, I think Jason's point is just such a good one that kind of really reinforces that fact. Cool. So I appreciate you all hanging tight with me. We're getting towards the end here. But I do want to make sure, now that we've covered signups, and actually real quick before I depart from signups, actually, that those slides that we just looked at, along with those videos, those are all on the Internship Connect website. So if you need to go back and sort of rewatch that and sort of get acquainted with the process, if you go to internshipconnect.resd.edu and click on the student sign up page, you'll be able to click on those slides and see them again. So don't feel like you have to commit all that to memory. But next up, I want to talk about more like what the conversation with employers is going to look like, or how you can prepare for that. Because as I said in the beginning, if you've never done this kind of event, or you've never had professional conversations or networking conversations, it might seem kind of weird, or you might not be sure how to approach it. And so we're going to talk through it right now so you feel a little bit better about it. Step one in this, in kind of thinking about how do I prepare for these conversations, step one, I would actually encourage you to kind of like think about yourself a little bit and reflect on yourself, and maybe even ask yourself these questions. So, for example, you might think, how would I explain to somebody why I chose to attend RISD, or why specifically I chose the major that I'm majoring in? If you are sophomore level or above, if you're a first year undergrad, you might think about, what am I thinking about majoring in and why? But how would you describe to somebody why you're here at RISD, why you're studying art and design, and why you're studying the major or discipline that you're focusing on? So that's a great kind of introduction and starting point to who you are creatively and what your interests are. Kind of related to that, you could kind of take that a little bit broader and think in a general sense, like, what am I excited about creatively? What artists or designers do I admire? What do I love seeing out in the world, right? Like, does photography really get me excited? Does architecture really get me excited? Do sculptural installations really, kind of pique my creative interests? Think about what excites you, and also think about, from your perspective and where you are right now, what are your strengths and creative skills as an artist or designer? What do you think you're really good at thus far? Knowing that could change over time. But what do you like to do and what are you good at now? Then thinking a little bit about, you're all here, right? And you're thinking about this event because you want an internship. You see it as a valuable thing. Why, right? What could you gain from an internship? What can you gain from an internship that maybe you can't as easily gain from class or studio, or just being an independent artist or designer? So, there's lots of answers to that question, but it could be like what it's like to be at a company and be working with clients, right? So how does that work to do design work, but do it where you're kind of working with clients? It could be better understanding of how goods or products are manufactured, right? How is that done on a large scale? How do companies market their work? There are lots of different answers to this question, and there's no right answer. But thinking about what you want to gain or learn from an internship is a great thing, and could be a good thing to share with companies too. The flip side of that is, what might you contribute? And this is, again, kind of connected to the skills question a little bit. But what do you think you would be able to bring? What are the assets or knowledge or abilities that you have that you might be able to contribute or bring to an internship? And this is actually just kind of connecting back to what Jason said and the comment that I made as well, which is that at the end of the day, like, go into these conversations with some confidence, right? I know it can be a nervous experience, right? When you're speaking with professionals, when you're a student, totally get that. And that's normal. But also, they're here to see you, right? And they're here because they want to have these conversations with you. You're not like burdening them, you know what I mean? They're excited about it too. And so go into these conversations with some confidence in that, and knowing that they're excited to meet with you, as excited as you are to meet with them. So after you've done that kind of reflection, I really think it's a great kind of exercise or a great way to prepare to think about what questions are you going to ask? What do you want to learn? What are you going to ask of these employers and representatives in the meetings? So it could be really simple and straightforward. What types of internships do they have available? What kinds of roles or positions? You might even ask the person you're meeting with, like, what's their role? What do they do at the company? And you'll see a mix probably too. Like you might see some that are artists or designers that are working on the creative side, but you also might see people who work in recruiting and are work part of the hiring process, and part of their job, or a large part of their job, is to find talent and get them to come into the company and work for the company. So you could learn what their role is, and that could be a great part of the conversation. You could ask, what skills or qualities are they looking for in a potential intern? This is really helpful because it helps you get an understanding of how you can build your application. If you learn what they're looking for, you can then potentially weave that content into your resume and portfolio when you apply later on. And also, like I said before earlier on, to learn about how interns are involved in the work of the company. What kinds of projects are they working on? What kind of teams are they a part of? What kind of supervision are they given? You know, who would they report to, and how would meetings and supervision happen between the intern and whoever their boss or supervisor is? What is the hiring process like? Is there an interview process? If so, how many interviews? And when is the best time of year to apply? So this, you might see some variety. I think in general, especially for summer internships, a lot of people are, going to be in that January to March range, but companies differ. And so asking this question to get a sense of when their applications open is a really, it's a simple question, but it's an important one. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point. So the question was, when you're speaking with them, will they give you feedback on your resume or portfolio sample? I think for the most part, these conversations are really more about sort of like information sharing, right? Which is more about like you talking about your interests and why you're potentially excited in interning with them, and they're sharing information about the work that they do and the internship opportunities, and less about sort of like a critique or feedback on the work. The resume and the portfolio sample are more for them to kind of like have, both in advance to know who they're meeting with a little bit, and also after the fact, it makes it easy for them to learn more about you and contact you later on. So it's less of a critique and feedback kind of a conversation. It is possible though that they may, especially if you do submit a portfolio sample, they may look at that in advance and they may bring up like a project that they saw and be like, I saw this was really cool. So I would say if you bring a portfolio sample, it might be good to be ready to talk about the work that you're highlighting on there, because it certainly could come up. But it's the conversation in general is not a portfolio review or like a critique. You know what I mean? So hopefully that answers the question. I think it was a really good one. And I would say for the most part, it's more conversational and information sharing. But if you submit a portfolio sample, they could comment on it and bring it up. And so that's a great thing. That's not a bad thing at all. But it kind of depends on the employer, and it depends on what you've given them too. Yeah, good question. Yeah. That's a really good point. I don't think so at all. So, and you might even, out of courtesy, you might just kind of tell them, you know what I mean? Like, please don't be distracted as you're talking. I may take a few notes just so I can, have this information about the internship opportunity and kind of come back to it. But I think as long as you maybe mention that so they understand what you're doing, no, I don't think that's unprofessional. And on the other hand, it actually shows your sincere interest. It shows that you're really thoughtful about what they're saying and that you're trying to, make sure that you're absorbing it fully. So yeah, you might, because it's Zoom, you might just want to kind of, because if we were in person, they'd know what you were doing, right? But over Zoom, you might have to just kind of say like, hope while you're talking, I may take some notes just so I can, remember everything and come back to it. But no, I don't think it's unprofessional. You'd want to balance that with like eye contact and seeming engaged, you know what I mean? So you wouldn't want to just be like head down the whole time. But I think if you balance it with seeming engaged and kind of making eye contact through the webcam, taking notes is fine. And sorry if I didn't repeat that. That question was like, is it okay or is it unprofessional to take notes while you're meeting with somebody that you can kind of refer back to. So when you're preparing, in addition to these questions, you don't have to think about it in such a structured way as I'm going to show you right now, but thinking about the conversation, or at least your part of the conversation in terms of like an introduction pitch and then questions, might be a helpful way to structure this. So for an intro, you might be telling them your name, your year in school, what you're studying and why. And then you also might balance that with like, I selected a meeting with you. I scheduled a meeting with you because I'm interested in your company for XYZ reasons, right? So kind of show them that you know a little bit about what they do and why you're interested in potentially interning with them. That'll make a really good impression. You could also talk about, back to the questions we were thinking about earlier, about like what you're passionate about and what your skill set is. This is a chance to kind of highlight that briefly. I'll show you an example in a second, so that'll feel a little bit more tangible maybe. But highlighting your background or skill set could be something that you could bring into the conversation. And then, like we were just looking at those lists of questions, it's always like keep the conversation going with questions, right? So preparing in advance questions that you have in general about internships, but also for each company, if there's certain things in particular that you're interested in for each company, having those questions ready, that's going to help keep the conversation moving, keep it active and engaged. And also it'll help you really maximize the event and learn what you want to learn from each company. So again, it might not be this structured, but I'm just kind of showing this example just to kind of, so you can see what this might look like in practice. So in this example, right, the student is saying, my name is Jaleesa Downing. I'm a sophomore in ID. I was excited to see that Kohler would be at Internship Connect because I'm really interested in design for the home environment. And I also saw on LinkedIn that multiple RISD alumni work at the company. Like, that's really cool. It's awesome to see those RISD connections. Then to the pitch, right, where we might talk about their class experience or what they're learning. So far in my classes, I've been developing strong fabrication skills in wood and metal. And I've also begun to teach myself SolidWorks in addition to software in the Adobe Creative Suite. I've even done some product design related projects, which you can see in my portfolio sample if you want to look at that. And then questions. So, I'm curious, or I'd like to ask, what kinds of skills do you typically look for in an intern at Kohler? And what are interns usually involved in? What kind of projects are they doing? And boom, you're off and running. They're probably going to respond to those questions, right? And then it's just a conversation, really. So again, it may not be this structured, right? But having these kinds of talking points prepared will probably make you feel a little bit more comfortable when you're in the conversation and feel like you're prepared and ready for it. We're all sort of Zoom or remote meeting pros at this point, so I think a lot of this will be stuff you already know. But just beforehand, test out your camera and Wi-Fi and your screen sharing capability in case you want to share your screen for any reason. You may not, but just in case, make sure it's all working. Keep background distractions to a minimum. Have a nice clean background. If you're using a digital background, just make sure that looks okay and it's not like distorted or anything like that. And just have good lighting. Make sure the lighting is in front of you or on top of you at least, not behind you, because then you'll be backlit and that won't be great. And then just a couple of other tips. Dress appropriately. Treat it like, even though it's not an interview, treat it almost as if it were, because you're trying to make a strong professional impression. So you want to think about this as like, what you wear to studio on a typical day, you want to take that up a notch. You know what I mean? If you are dressing a little bit above how you normally dress, it's just going to show respect to the organization and they'll appreciate it. It'll give a professional vibe. So just kind of take your dress up a notch. You don't have to wear a suit or anything like that, but just be a little bit more on your game attire wise. Make sure your cell phone and all notifications on your computer are turned off so they don't interrupt the meeting, because that could just interrupt the flow. Wouldn't be great. And then sort of to the point about the questions about taking notes, just be engaged, right? And you've all experienced this in your own Zoom meetings. Like, try to look at somebody in the eye or in the webcam in this case, so that you're seeming active and engaged. Your body language will say a lot here, in addition to the things that you say in conversation. Okay to take notes, but just make sure you're balancing that with being actively engaged in the conversation. So those are just some tips. So any questions before we leave off on like the conversation piece of it? Did that all help make sense as to how you could prepare? Cool. Awesome. Okay. So we're almost done. So this is the last thing we want to talk about, and then we've kind of covered all the ground for the stuff that you need to know for tonight. This is the last piece, but it is important, and it's a piece that you don't want to lose sight of, and that's following up with the people you meet with at Internship Connect. And this is this idea of like these connections could prove like and have lasting value, not just for internships in the coming year, but even beyond that. So you want to think about how you can really maximize this event in that way. So I really strongly encourage for all of you that one of the things that you ask when you're meeting with somebody is if they would mind if you get their email address so that you can follow up with them at a later date to thank them for having the conversation with you, and also to follow up with them for additional questions or potentially applying to internships in the future. I can't guarantee that all people you meet with will be cool with that, but many of them will. And again, they're like here to meet with you and talk with you and be in contact with you. So many of them will probably be okay with it. And it's totally appropriate for you to ask that question so that you can stay in touch. So encourage that to be maybe towards the end of the conversation, one of the things that you ask the people that you're meeting with. And the value behind this is, like I said before, this can be kind of your first foray or your first move into starting to build a professional network and build company connections for people that are kind of outside of the RISD bubble. So by getting their contact information, it allows you to kind of start to build this network and have lasting professional relationships that will be utilized beyond just this event. Not only will you be saying thank you, and I'll kind of show this in a second, not only will you be saying thank you to them for taking the time to meet with you at Internship Connect, but it also means now that you have their email, you might follow up with them later in the semester to update them on new work that you've produced this semester, right? As a way to sort of keep in touch with them about internship opportunities and also update them on what you're doing and what you've developed in your own classes and art and design practice. And then maybe even beyond the end of the semester, especially if we're talking about summer internships, you might even be following up with them in January or February to ask about internship applications or to get a better sense of what opportunities they have at that stage, because they're probably getting closer to opening up their applications at that point. So in practice, what we're talking about here is basically after the event, within maybe a week, a couple of days would be ideal, but I would say ideally within a week of the event, you're sending the people you met with an email that's really just about, at its core, saying thanks. You might also reach out to them on LinkedIn too. I think email is like your number one priority if you can, but if you don't have their email or you're not able to track their email down, you can see if they're on LinkedIn and shoot them a message that way. But the main idea, whether you're doing it through email or LinkedIn, is to really have a message that basically, again, says thank you. That can be like the main reason why you're reaching out. It's just courteous, and it's a good practice to get involved in when you're having any kind of professional conversation with somebody, and especially later on if you have a formal interview, you always want to follow up and say thanks to people that you interview with, because some people, it's just professional courtesy, but some people are really big on that, and they want to know that you're sort of like appreciative of the opportunity. And if you don't say thanks, sometimes for some people it can be sort of a red flag, or it can harm your ability to get an opportunity, believe it or not. And it's just like, it's the nice thing to do when somebody's taking the time out of their day to talk to you in a professional context. So giving thanks, thanking them for taking the time to talk to you is a good idea. You also, if you can, and this is back to your point about notes, if you're taking notes and you're kind of thinking about the conversation, you can actually refer back to your notes and think about the details of the conversation. Was there something that they highlighted about their internship opportunities or about what they look for in students that stood out to you or was meaningful? So you can refer back to something they said which resonated with you. And then you just want to reinforce and re-stress your interest in interning with them and kind of say that like this opportunity really sort of reinforced my goal of interning with you or thinking that it would be an amazing place to intern. So you're sort of seeing in a LinkedIn message format there a version of this, short and sweet and easy. On LinkedIn, you have a smaller space to say things, so it has to be a little tighter. But very simple, right? What they're just saying is it was so great speaking with you at RISD Internship Connect. Our conversation really affirmed my desire to intern at Chronicle Books in this case. I'd love to stay in contact and continue the conversation at a time that works for you in the future. So that's a very short version of this because it's on LinkedIn, but the same principles apply if you were to do this in an email. You could maybe write a little bit longer, but you don't have to go crazy. But saying thanks and trying to maintain the connection for later on in the year when you might be applying is a great and important thing to do. And as I said, in addition to an email, I encourage you, start building your LinkedIn network so that these connections can be things that you take with you over time and you don't lose track of the connection. So reaching out and inviting them to connect with you and join your network on LinkedIn is a great idea, because then you're sort of helping to ensure that they stay a part of your professional network, and you're starting to build your network on LinkedIn, which is a great thing. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground, right? But if you are still unsure about certain things, or you want some advice on your resume, or you are going to build a portfolio sample and you want some advice on that, we're here to help you. So we have drop-in advising hours on the screen there, Monday, Friday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We also do them Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And you can go on Artworks and schedule 30 or 45-minute appointments with our career advisors as well. If you'd prefer a little bit of a longer conversation, drop-ins are typically 15 to 20 minutes. Appointments are longer, 30 to 45. So you have both of those options. That link on our website, the Meet Us page, gives you instructions on how to make an appointment, but basically it's done via Artworks. So if you've been on Artworks, there's an appointment tab that you can use. We're here to help you. Definitely take advantage of our drop-in hours or appointments, and we'll help you get prepped for this event if you need a little bit more personalized advice. Otherwise, thank you I know there was a lot of content. Thanks for sticking around and hearing it. Thank you very much.